You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is 1/27/2021. Well, if you're like me, you probably have this fear that you're going to outlive your money, especially in retirement. And that isn't a pleasant place to be. So, on FSN, we're always looking for solutions. I'd like to know your predicament. Are you afraid you're going to outlive your money? Or do you think your money is going to outlast you? Obviously, the ideal is to have it end both at the same time, but unfortunately, that's not possible for many of you out there, for myself as well. New guest on the show, a gentleman who's an expert. His name is Mark Singer. And you can find Mark's site, 55retire.com. And there's a quiz, if you're up for it, that you'll probably want to take. And we'll get into that more later. In the meantime, Mark, your company, Safe Harbor Retirement Planning, you've been a guide to thousands of people since, going on over 30 years now. And I guess people wonder, well, how does anybody stay around that long? And you'll probably tell us, but it's a pleasure to have you on the show. So you've got a recent book, Don't Outlive Your Money in Retirement, 7 key steps to you unveil the step-by-step process used to maximize the so-called retirement journey. And we've seen you all over the place, Wall Street Journal, ABC News, Fox News, Bloomberg, etc. It's great to have you on the show. So what's happened recently? Well, the stock market's been going up, and I guess that's good if you have retirement funds invested there. But how much longer can it go on?
Kerry, thanks for having me on. It's very interesting. Just this past weekend, when you were just talking about the stock market and how long will it go on, you have some of these what we call perma bears. In other words, people who are constantly waiting and prognosticating for the market to go down and go into bear market territory. And, the headlines are, market will go down 30%. And, you read the headline, you go, I wonder what's going on. And then you realize it's the same people who say the same thing year over year over year who go, hey, the market's about to go down. A broken clock is right twice a day, right? So you have to be careful not to be deceived by markets either going up or down. And when you ask the question about, will I outlive my money? The real question is, have you actually done any planning to figure out how much money you actually need? Because that's truly the real question. And, you kept talking about, the studies kept showing, if you outlive your money, that's the number one fear for retirees. But you know what the other big fear is? And we talk about it with our clients all the time, because money is only one piece of it. And, our industry has told you to take a look at your money and your nest egg and your investments and taxes and all that kind of stuff. Have you maximized your Social Security? But the real way to truly enjoy the retirement journey, and the number one fear truly people have when you really dig deeper, even if they have enough money, how do I get the joy out of life? What am I going to do every day? And I have a client of mine, a couple, they're in their 70s, they're going to retire this year. And I turned to him and I said, so, the planning shows that, you can retire, we've made conservative assumptions and looks like you won't be in a position to outlive your money. So what are you going to do? He says, well, I can only play golf 3 days a week, so I don't know what I'm going to do the rest of the time. And I turned to her and I said, so, retirement looks great. What are you going to do now that you're going to be retired? What's your fear? She says, I don't know what I'm going to do with him in the house every day. And, that sort of is what prompted me to write the book, my most recent book, Don't Outlive Your Money in Retirement, which I wrote last year. And it was all prompted by the pandemic, because the pandemic gave a lot of people who were considering retirement a glimpse at what is ahead. Nowhere to go, not an office to go to, and both of you were sitting home looking at each other, ready to kill each other. And, for a lot of people, it was a wake-up call. And I wrote that book because, again, retirement is as much about the money, but even if you have money, how do you get a really, truly fulfilled joy of the journey if you don't really know what you're going to do and how you're going to go about it?
That is a great question. For me, the answer is never retire. I'm not a golfer. I have many, many interests. I've actually acquired new interests over the years because I'm thinking, I went to the doctor not too long ago before I got COVID. But anyway, I'm actually in better health now after COVID than I was before. But that's another story for another day. My point is that I said, the doctor said, you might live to 90 based on your health profile. And I'm thinking, 90, man, I wasn't planning on living that long. I better find some new things to do, because if I'm doing what I'm doing now, even though I love my work and it keeps me fulfilled, I might have a problem down the road.
And therein lies the question, right? So when it comes to planning, the number one thing we talk about with the 7 steps, and I got to be honest with you, our industry has done a lousy job of truly educating people about how to make that transition into retirement. First, how to properly prepare for it in our earlier years, which is saving over long periods of time. It's the number one lesson I learned from my clients many years ago. As you said, I've been in this business for 32 years. The biggest lesson I ever learned from my clients who were with some of those Fortune 100 companies years ago, was that they were putting away $5, $10, $20 a week into their 401k plans and let it just grow for long periods of time. They didn't end up with millions of dollars, but they ended up with enough money to make sure that they had enough income so that they could have an excellent retirement based on what their goals were. So, we really don't, we haven't done a good job of empowering people about how to put money away early on. But the people I typically talk with are those people who are, in their mid-50s, they're approaching retirement, or they've recently retired in their 60s and trying to figure out, where do I get my income? How do I maximize my Social Security? There's 567 different strategies for Social Security. Which one do you take? Have you ever been down this road before? What happens if I die and I leave my surviving spouse with not enough money? And then you asked the question about the stock market. I'll ask it in a different way. Is it worse to take more risk than you should, or less risk than you need to? Am I better off to be 100% in the stock market, or have everything under my waterbed? And the answer is, it really all depends. And the key to the planning is, and the key to give you some peace of mind with regards to, I can pursue my goals with regards to my retirement and my goals, is to understand, one, what your cash flow need is, what's coming in from Social Security, or hopefully maybe somebody has a pension, and then what kind of risk should I be taking in order to accomplish my cash flow needs. And the way I position it is, I say to my clients, let's take the least amount of risk necessary in order to accomplish whatever your income need is. And in that way, we can not have to worry so much about, are we at a bubble? Is it about to crash? Let's put in place a moderate portfolio, an all-weather, well-balanced portfolio, make some minor adjustments along the way. But really, truly, the key to retirement is not the money management, which has been the focus while you were working. It's more about generating tax-efficient cash flow and having the liquidity to do what you want to do when you want to do it.
Which makes total sense. I mean, everybody needs to be a risk manager to some extent, and it's not something we really go into in a lot of planning. A lot of people in the market probably too much invested in the market, and therefore they've effectively bet that things will go on the way they're going.
So let's go back to 1998, 1999, where, it was a different paradigm at that point with the stock market. Companies that were coming out, the more you could show a loss, the more the valuation or the higher your stock price was. We knew that couldn't last forever, and certainly we had the tech bubble burst then, and we had 3 successive years that were down. We had the most recent recession of 2007, 2008, where the market went down from top to trough 47%. And then, we've had, the last year where the markets were just as volatile as ever, historically volatile. How do you invest through these times? How do you manage this volatility? And more importantly, what we try to communicate to our clients is, how does the volatility actually impact you? It's not that there is volatility or the market is going up or down. It's based on your long-term goals. Is there anything you need to do in reaction to what's happening with the market? And I'll give you, a particular story last year. Pre-election, a lot of money comes out of the markets anyway, any presidential election. But last year, add on top of that the uncertainty of the election and the pandemic, almost $1 trillion came out of the market, and much of it did not go back in while the market was making its recovery. So those who reacted knee-jerk or took a look at headlines and figured, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here, they missed extraordinary days on the market, which in the long run will have an impact on them. So the key is, when you're looking at that stock market, as you initially were talking about, is try to divorce the headlines from your decision-making process with your portfolio. And again, that comes back to the planning. The planning grounds you. The planning gives you a sense of what your assumptions are and what your guidelines are, what your benchmarks are, and not to be as worried about markets going up or down, just getting the appropriate amount of return for the risk you need for the cash flow that's going to give you your retirement goals.
Which makes a lot of sense there.
So, it's funny, people, you talked about not outliving your money. How does that impact you on a day-to-day basis, right? So one of my favorite calls was a number of years ago. A client called me up and said, can I do the kitchen cabinets? Mm-hmm. And if you know me, I don't do the kitchen cabinets, okay? But what she was asking really was, if I spend the money today, will it be there tomorrow? And if it's not going to be there tomorrow, how will it impact me? And how do I have to plan properly? And then if it's okay for me to spend the money today on the fill in the blank, kitchen cabinet, trip to Disney, second house, trip around the world, whatever it is, however much that money is, in the planning, you can put in that you spent it now, and then see if it has an impact on you later based on your current assumptions. In other words, she needed to spend $8,000 on kitchen cabinets. We figured it was fine. We found the best place to take the money out as tax efficiently as possible. And I mention that because some people have retirement plans and IRAs and also some personal funds. So where is the money best to take it out? Not everybody always knows that. Versus, I want to go on this big trip, I'm going to spend $50,000, $60,000 when they let us do that, go around the world. Can I do that? What will the impact be on me tomorrow if I spend that money today? And that's one of those things, and it's one of those sayings I have, take the mystery out of the decision-making process. Oftentimes, we tend not to spend that kind of money. We're not used to spending that kind of money. And so therefore, in the planning, if we put in the plan, we're going to spend $50,000 on X, Y, or Z, we can see if it has an impact on us 10, 15, or 20 years out. And that will inform us in terms of how we have to lead our life and invest in the marketplace.
All right. So that's a very rational way of doing it, isn't it?
Don't just survive. Thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Fury Gold Mines is a Canada-focused exploration and development company committed to aggressively growing its scalable, high-grade gold assets with major drill campaigns planned across its 3.5 million-ounce portfolio. Fury is led by a management team of proven explorers and developers with a track record of success in advancing and financing project development. Fury Gold Mines is well-positioned to create value for investors with low-risk development growth and the potential for a new major discovery. Fury Gold Mines trades on the TSX and NYSE American under the ticker FURY. To learn more, go to furygoldmines.com. That's furygoldmines.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
I'd like to think so. And for, so much of what I do is financial planning, but so much of the other side is really being a psychologist to understand what keeps us up at night, what really are you thinking about, what really, motivates you, where do you really want to get your joy from in terms of the next, chapter in life. And, you had mentioned a quiz. One of the things I find when talking to people is they're not properly prepared or don't even know if they're prepared for retirement. And that quiz came out of the creation of the book. I said, well, we put together the 7 steps. What are people going to do now? Well, so we put together a quick 3-minute, 15-question quiz for people to answer each of those steps along the way. It takes them, as I say, 3 minutes. And once you finish it, we'll score it for you. We'll give you where you are in the 3 various stages of retirement preparedness and what you need to do. And if, by the way, you do the quiz, and I believe heartily, and I'm sure you do in your business practice as well, you want to give as much value as possible to people right up front, we're going to give them a free chapter of my new book and a couple of worksheets to help them have more clarity with regards to where they are and what they need to do. And if anyone's interested in doing that, they can go to retirenowquiz.com. That's retirenowquiz.com. Quick 3-minute quiz, get a free chapter of my book, get a couple of worksheets, and we'll give you a score in terms of where you are in terms of your preparedness for retirement.
And that sounds like it could be extremely helpful. I'm sure you've helped a lot of people in the past, haven't you?
My rewards, when we talk with clients, on our formal meetings, let's say it's an hour conversation, to be honest with you, Kerry, it's 5 minutes on money and 55 minutes on life. I mean, I learn more from my clients and the stories and the journeys they go through. To be honest with you, my favorite stories have absolutely nothing to do with money. And the biggest one that I can recall is a client of mine who wanted to put together a surprise 70th birthday trip for his wife to South Africa. And his comment to me was that he found the benefit of planning was it gave him the freedom to know that he was spending, and it was about a $40,000 trip because they were gone for about 3 weeks, that it was okay to spend the money and not worry about anything else, that he could find the money somewhere and take his bride on this trip and surprise her with the trip of a lifetime. And those types of stories in terms of the planning is great from a financial perspective, but how it informs you in terms of how you can lead the rest of your life is even more powerful than just the money side of things.
All right. So when you're doing this, though, you have to make certain assumptions, obviously.
Yes. So some of the assumptions we find that people, when I talk to people and they tell me about plans they've done before, some of the assumptions they've made. For instance, I talked to somebody, they were working with Fidelity, they were getting a 7% return on their money, and therefore they thought they could take 7% income from that portfolio. We know that you can't do that. So taking the proper amount of income from a portfolio, our industry tends to think about a 4% number over your lifetime that you can take no more than. That's not, in stone, but we talk to clients about how to think properly about how to take money out. Social Security is another big one where a lot of people make a lot of mistakes. Studies show that almost 40% of people take it as soon as they're eligible at age 62. Big mistake for most people, leaving tens of thousands of dollars on the table. And if you're married, potentially leaving your surviving spouse with not enough money for his or her lifetime without you. So we really need to go in and sort of recalibrate, re-educate, re-inform people in terms of how to think about things. My role really is educator. I've done that for years, spoken nationally for years, and I want my clients empowered and informed so they can make the decisions that are good for them. Doesn't mean on Social Security you wait till 70 or 60. There's no right or wrong answer most of the time. You have to make an informed decision. So I let my client make that decision, but after we give them the information that is relevant to them so they can be better informed.
And that's a great point, because for myself, I didn't know about really Social Security, the options available, till I connected with a guest, Lawrence Kotlikoff, and then I was looking at it and I saw, hey, I actually can get survivor's benefits from when I'm 66 and change. It'll take me up to 70, and then I can get the full maximum benefit from Social Security. If I hadn't come across that book, I don't know. I was never really planning to take it at 66 unless I absolutely needed it. But here I get, a big slug of change there for 3.5 years till I then qualify for the maximum at 70.
And, so we have 7 different calculators for our clients with regards to Social Security, all sorts of different scenarios. And I just recently had a conversation with a client last week she's going to retire at 62, and she wanted to start taking her Social Security at 63 because she was afraid Social Security is not going to be there later on. That's a whole different conversation. The reality is it will be fine. We will get our money.
How much
with
it'll
changes
be worth.
to legislation. Well, there'll be changes to legislation. There's no doubt about that. They'll make it happen. They can't afford not to. But in sharing with her how to truly think about the fear, in sharing with her how to think about the math, we agreed that she would at least push out her initial claim for Social Security from age 63 to full retirement age for her, who was 66 in some months, and possibly wait to 70, because there's huge benefits for her to doing that. But, so many think, let's grab the money now, and I'll get many more checks. But the problem is you don't realize you lose out on 8% deferred credits every single year, plus inflation. You can't even get that in the markets. So you really need to think big picture. You need to coordinate taking your Social Security with your required minimum distributions, what your cash flow need is, what your income is. Another mistake people make, if you're still working and you start taking your income, your Social Security before full retirement age, it is a big whammy in terms of taxes.
Very true.
So you really need to be very careful and cautious about when you take it. So that's all about planning. And really the number one mistake people make really is not doing the planning. And once you do the planning, then you get informed, and then you can make intelligent decisions.
And I know of people who aren't even thinking in these terms, but if you've been married for more than 10 years and you're divorced, you might very well get spousal benefits, so you can opt for them first and then switch at 70 and get your full retirement benefit. And the difference can be huge, especially we're living longer now, at least most of us, or many of us. Many of you out there will be living longer. And if you're going to go at 72, then you take it early. But if you're probably going to live into your 80s, then you want to put it off as long as you possibly can, unless you absolutely need the money.
So, and it's interesting, if you absolutely need the money, when do you think you need that money more than? Later on or now? I mean, later on, it's even going to be worse, right? So it may even beg for you to defer it. But the key thing you're talking about is, and most people don't understand this, you can actually change your strategy once, twice, 3, 4 times, depending upon your circumstances. You can get different amounts depending upon your circumstances at different stages throughout your retirement. most people don't understand that and don't plan for that. As you said, if you had been divorced, more than 10 years and you're eligible for that, you could, take, the divorced benefit and defer yours until 70 and get that 8+% credit, and then take yours at 70 and be in a better place. So, that type of planning is really important because particularly if you're married, you could leave a couple $100,000 on the table if you do it wrong.
I know. Hey, if you're disabled, you could get your disability and then switch when you're 70 and get your full Social Security benefit. There's so many different variations here, and there's so many permutations that if someone doesn't see somebody like you, then they're really cheating. You're really cheating yourself, potentially out of tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. And for those who have worked with advisors during their working years, that's great, because the number one conversation with that advisor, has been, let's accumulate the most money we can. But when you now go to transition into retirement, it's a whole new landscape. It's a whole different conversation. It's called the distribution stage of financial planning, and that's
right.
where we live. We live, with our clients who are 55 to 75, who are now having to deal with that transition and how to get the income from that nest egg. And those conversations are much more complicated and need different types of skill sets in terms of those conversations than the typical advisor or broker.
All right, I'm going to mix things up a little bit because I've had a number of guests on recently, and I have a number of friends that have actually moved to Puerto Rico, spend 183 days a year there, and their tax savings is incredible. I will confess, I've thought about it myself, but I don't think I'm ready to be there. But for a lot of people making a lot of money, and even if you're not making that much money, it can make total sense and can change everything, can it?
Absolutely. A part of the overall planning, one of the questions that we ask is, where do you want to live and why, right? You may be moving because you want to be closer to the grandkids. Be careful with that one, by the way, because sometimes the kids move and leave you there.
In fact, you can count on it.
You no longer have the kids or the grandkids, right?
Yeah,
you have to be careful with that one.
Yeah.
And then we do have clients who, for either estate planning purposes or income tax planning purposes. I'm here in the Northeast, and I've got a number of clients who have their primary residence down in Florida. And there's a reason for doing that because they save enormous amount of federal estate death taxes. So, on the state level, excuse me, not the
Sure.
federal, the state death taxes.
Yeah.
You could end up spending $500,000 or $1 million if you're here in the Massachusetts area on state death taxes, and avoid that if you go to Florida. That's a big reason to go to Florida.
Among others. Yeah.
Yes. It's 78 degrees there and it's 8 degrees here. So there's another reason. But you really have to understand as you start to envision what your retirement is going to be. Again, so much more than just the money. What hobbies do you have? How do you want to lead your life? Where do you want to lead it? Why are you going there? How important are the kids and the grandkids? What are your estate death taxes going to be? What are the income taxes going to be? You need to put that all into play and then start to make the planning does wonderful things. We can create what-if scenarios, okay? What if I move to Florida? What if I stay here and buy a condo in Florida? Or what if I, stay here and I buy a condo in Austin, Texas to go near the kids and grandkids? What's the impact of me spending this kind of money now on my retirement later? And that is truly the benefit from a monetary perspective of doing the planning.
And then you get into questions of converting your IRA to a Roth and do I pay the taxes now when I'm maybe in a lower bracket this year and I can really, or do partial conversions, all that type of thing. Well, I think you got a good idea of why you need to talk to Mark. Mark, just tell us, where do we find you again? How do we connect with you on the web? And how can we connect with you direct rather than going through a website?
Sure. So I'm at the number 55retire.com is the website. We just created a whole new website there, and I think it's very friendly now. A whole bunch of little short videos on there that you can really see what our process is. You can go on retirenowquiz.com to find out how prepared you are. Or if you want to call us directly, we are at 781-599-2660, and I have clients in many different states. Zoom is a wonderful tool now, particularly with the pandemic.
I live on it.
Connecting with all sorts of people all over the country, so it's not an issue.
I totally live on Zoom, so I know exactly what you're saying. Hey, there's so many other questions that I know you want to ask Mark, so just get in touch with him, and we'll have the link to his site in the show notes to this interview. Very valuable, very practical. Even if you think I don't have enough money and I don't really need to be planning, you do in any event, because when you fail to plan, you plan for failure. And that's always the way it works. Hey, send us your questions, KL@KerryLutz.com. Twitter feed is @KerryLutz. Our website, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Sign up for the free newsletter. Mark, been a total pleasure. You're going to be our regular go-to retirement guy on the show now.
Kerry, I appreciate that and look forward to talking with your listeners more often.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.